What are some of the biggest traps you see leaders fall into when giving feedback?
Yeah, so one of the biggest traps I see leaders fall into is walking into the conversation with unhealthy motives. So maybe I've used a great feedback model, I have the perfectly crafted message, maybe I've even role played with another leader, but my intent going into that conversation is I know I'm right and they're wrong, and I'm going to prove them wrong. Or it's about shaming or blaming, pointing fingers, or you truly don't believe they're going to change. You feel like you're just going through the motions. It doesn't matter what you say, that intent is going to shine through. And so that is always the first step that I work with leaders on is make sure that you get your intent right, that you're walking in believing that they can improve, that you're giving this feedback to them because you want to see them succeed, because you want to improve the customer experience for others, because you want to strengthen the relationship and trust that you have with this individual. So asking yourself, what is it that I want? What do I want for myself? What do I want for this person? What do I want for us collectively? By giving them this feedback. What is the ultimate purpose? And use that to craft your intent first. Then you can craft your message. So it's the intent piece. It's so important.
You talk about moving leaders from reactive mode to intentional mode. And I think that plays a role in it too, right? When we feel like we need to be understood, we are constantly reactive, or we feel like someone has slighted us. We want to get into that fix it reactive mode. So, can you share a practical exercise or mindset shift that can help that transition stick?
Well, it depends, I think, on what you're reacting to. But the first thing that comes to mind is asking yourself the story or stories you're telling yourself. What judgments, conclusions, assumptions am I making right now? Taking a step back and understanding the stories that you're telling yourself can help to lessen the emotion that's attached to them, because that's what's really driving our emotions and sometimes our reactions is we saw and heard something, we didn't get all the information, so we filled in all of the pieces, we've told ourselves some stories about that, it makes us feel a certain way, and then we act. So before getting into that reaction mode, getting back to the stories and identifying what they are. I think that that's something that can be really helpful. Another thing that comes to mind, because again, we get into those reactive places when we're stressed, tensions are high, stakes seem to be high, emotions seem to be high. And I mean, practicing mindfulness practices, resilience practices are really helpful. There's a great book that I recommend to almost every leader that I work with. It's called The Illustrated Happiness Trap. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it's based on, I think it's acceptance cognitive therapy, ACT therapy. And what's great about it is it has really practical exercises you can do when your emotions are starting to spiral. And one of the exercises that it shares with you is when your emotions are starting to spiral, the stories are coming, maybe even that inner critic is coming in, have it create a voice in your head like a dog, like Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo is saying these things to you, right? And that's the reaction is you giggle, you kind of laugh at it. It takes the power away from the emotions. And then you can zoom out more. You can look at a situation more objectively and be more intentional. I think it's those emotions, they get in the way of us not being able to be intentional. So if we can get to a place where we're processing them more effectively, identifying the stories or doing simple exercises like the ones from the Illustrated Happiness Trap, that's a place that we can start.
What do you think, or what have you seen is often the real root cause to overwhelm?
Ooh, it's hard to pick one thing. The thing that there's two things that are coming up for me. One is our addiction to urgency. It is really hard for us to get out of urgency mode. We get that little hit of dopamine when we send that email, we check that item off of our list, and it might help us in the short term. But when we're in a leadership role, we need to be zooming out a lot more and thinking more about the long term. So that is one thing that comes up for me. And then the other piece to that is really knowing what's important. When everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And then everything becomes urgent, and we tend to go to what's going to give us our bad habits. You know what? It feels really good to just clear out the email. So that's what I'm going to focus on, even though that might not be the most important thing to do right now. And so there's some practices that I work with leaders on to help them get out of that space. One of them, the biggest tip I give to leaders, this is something I use myself, is to have a planning meeting with yourself every Monday morning. So from 8 to 8:30 or 8:30 to 9, I don't remember exact time on my calendar, I have a running meeting, and it is a meeting with myself to plan the week. And that's where I look at all of the items that are on my calendar. I look a few weeks out. I identify what's most important for me to accomplish today and this week. What are the things that are going to move the needle? And what are the things I should be noting? The things, I'm not adding value to this. It's not adding value to me. This doesn't need to be talked about right now, so we can reschedule it. This hour conversation really could be an email or a 30-minute conversation as well, right? But you're really evaluating the things that you're doing, and you're time blocking. So those open spaces that are on your calendar, you are blocking them off for thinking time to get work done as well. And then I color code everything on my calendar as well. So I know, is this a meeting? Is this something that I need to show up and I'm presenting? Is this focused work time? Is this something I need to have travel? So you're starting your week with a much more intentional focus on what are the things that are important. So, and creating space for some of those urgent things that come up, because they do, right? You know, about 25% of the time, we might be doing a little bit of firefighting. But if you're doing any more than that, then there's some things that you're not working on behind the scenes, planning, relationships, process improvement that you really want to delve into. So that planning meeting is key. And it's something that I work with every leader that I coach. Let's get this on the calendar so you have a process every week where you're being really intentional.
So how can leaders practice saying no? Because I really think that is a mindset block for a lot of people.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what I recommend to leaders is challenge yourself to nope one thing a week. So for the next 4 to 6 weeks, every week on Monday or Sunday, whatever your planning time is, choose one thing that you're going to say no to. Just the practice of saying nope is very liberating, and you start getting into the habit of it. So you're being more strategic with your yeses and nos. And I remember I was listening to a podcast where the speaker on the podcast said, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And that thing you're saying no to could be your family. It could be the meeting that's really going to get you to your goal. It could be developing that relationship that's going to help improve the performance of your team. So it's really taking a step back to say, is my people pleasing actually causing more problems? And what role model am I setting for my team if I can't say no to anything? Because it's going to lead to burnout, and it leads to people sending emails on Saturdays and working on vacations. And I talk to so many leaders who say, well, I don't expect my team to do that. When they go on vacation, I want them to go on vacation. When they go to their houses at the end of the day, I don't expect them to check emails. But then they're doing it, and they're sending the midnight emails. Our actions, they speak louder than words.